Hello, my guest today has been working in digital assets for almost 10 years, starting at Kraken in San Francisco, then at OKX in Beijing, and Circle in Hong Kong. He launched BSV futures trading at PoloniX, and then the Float SV exchange and RelayX wallet. Today, RelayX presents a range of BSV-based apps, with the wallet function being just one of them. He's promoted entrepreneurship in BSV with his Cambrian SV boot camps, which bring developers together. Today, I want to ask him about his ideas for the future direction of BSV. So I'd like to welcome Jack Liu. Hi, Jack.
Hey, Charles. Good to be on with you again. How are you?
Very good. And how are you? You're sitting in a very exotic location. You better tell us where you are, I think.
I'm out here in the Bahamas.
Lovely. Well, thank you for sparing half an hour from the beach, and I'm sure we're going to have an interesting conversation.
Wonderful.
You're listening to CoinGeek Conversations with Charles Miller.
Well, Jack, I want to start with something controversial in the world of BSV, which is, I believe that you put a great emphasis on the price of BSV, which is the one thing that everybody's supposed to not worry about. Why do you think the price of BSV is very important?
Well, I think at a macro level, beyond sort of the Bitcoin holders becoming rich, part of what drew me to the Bitcoin was the incentive design of the system. And I think many people embark that Bitcoin is not a computer science invention. It's not about technology. It's not about cryptography. It's about incentive design, which is how do you build this trusted system that does not have a central authority, that removes power from money, that can kind of free the world. And price is sort of a gauge on how that system is doing. And a lot of the goals that I have for a society built on blockchain and Bitcoin is sort of changing the way money works. And today we live in a society where finance is about 25% of GDP. And whether you're a baker or a musician or a lawyer or a banker yourself, you have to care about finance a lot because people are earning in a fiat currency of their country. Then they must sort of invest and speculate with that money in today's time. You can notice this, with the stimulus checks going into crypto. And all of this is kind of a distorted financial system that is becoming more and more unequal. And what I would like to see using Bitcoin and Bitcoin with bit as data and coin as money is if people were earning and spending and consuming and producing on a single ledger that itself had a deflationary money supply, then basically people would no longer use finance as a necessity. It becomes an option that maybe 10% of the population actively engages in, not 100%. And it creates a world where it really is about the production, the consumption, and the utility of society. And finance is not something that you have to go through. For that to be the case, I would want to see Bitcoin be the base currency of the world. And that's why I think, as well as it is nice to store some video files or whatever text on the blockchain, I would want to see as a macro indicator the price, rise.
Well, in a way, I think, as I said, it's a kind of heresy to want the price to rise in BSV, but people who perhaps secretly would like that to happen, the orthodoxy is that it will happen of its own accord as long as enough business is being done on BSV, enough transactions are taking place and so on, the price will look after itself. But do you have suggestions as to how the price itself can be raised by various strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's 21 million Bitcoins and there's subdivisible to 100 million pieces. So I think it's like 21 quadrillion total pieces of Satoshis. I think that if you truly believe Bitcoin is an abundant ledger, something that can scale for the use of the entire world, then it goes without saying that if you build the right type of utility for the ledger and for the people of the world, then the price would rise because there's only this many units on the ledger. And I think that part of what makes Bitcoin SV seem a bit scamish is this idea that people want to be applauded for whatever applications that they're building on the chain, yet they don't want to take any responsibility for the price And that to me is like saying, I launched a website on the internet, but I have no users, and that's okay because I launched a website. And if you actually had users on chain, then the price would rise. So I would say that mostly currently the applications are not really what the people want.
What would entrepreneurs do if they were taking responsibility for the price, like you're suggesting?
Yeah, so they would think about what are the attributes that make Bitcoin exciting. So what I'm excited about Bitcoin, I know my colleagues and other peers are excited about, is that it's an open ledger. So any developer is able to come in and build something on the ledger without any walled garden, right? With no permission needed. As well, the infrastructure piece, the miners, anyone's allowed to come in and mine. So this is not a guarded, secret kind of corporation type of thing like proof of stake. So you want to preserve, when you're building applications on top, you want to preserve those powerful effects of Bitcoin, that it's global, anyone can join. What you don't want is to leverage that ledger and build a closed system on top, no matter how nice it is, because then as developers and users interact with the closed economy, then you lose a lot of the power of the base layer Bitcoin. So for me, in what we've done at Relay, we've tried to build things in an on-chain way that is free of patents, free of NDAs, that is as interoperable as it possibly can. Me not being a developer, I think there's some shortcomings that we've had in terms of how open our systems are, but that's certainly the direction, because that preserves and expands all the powerful effects of Bitcoin instead of narrows it down.
But there is a problem with interoperability between wallets, isn't there? I mean, tokens and things can't be paid from one kind of wallet to another and stuff like that, which is pretty basic, I would have thought.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons is that Bitcoin was supposed to scale from the first block. And for good reason, Satoshi limited to 1 megabyte until there was a price, because you don't have a supply and demand curve unless you have a price. And you don't want to exhaust the miners' capacities too early in the system. You can imagine if people wanted the miners to upload cat videos and pictures in the beginning days when Bitcoin didn't have a price, then you go to the miners with a barrel of Bitcoin. Hey, here's 1,000 Bitcoins. Please store my videos. The miners are like, I don't know what that's worth. So for the right reason, it started with a 1 megabyte limit, but it should have been lifted very early. So had that been happening, then Bitcoin would have had the first mover advantage, plus a large block size, plus low price. And then basically the right people working on the right things would have the right allocations of Bitcoin in their pocket, making them feel very abundant and build on Bitcoin.
So if we go back into history, what
Yes.
you're saying really is that it was just a tragedy that the small blockers won that big sort of series of battles over the big blockers.
Right. So now you have the big blocks preserved as of, you call it 2018, November 15, or when Genesis was restored, you call it January 2020. So you've got basically a 2 or 3 year ecosystem. And that's no excuse, because you've seen like new blockchains launch, whether it's Solana or EOS or Near or Phantom. These things have also launched very recently, but they grow very fast. But there's a difference, right? Here, you have the functionality of big block Bitcoin preserved in the last 2 or 3 years, but the allocation of coins dates back to the original block in 2009, which I wouldn't change that. I think that's fair, but it means that Bitcoins right now, Bitcoin SV, are in the hands of a lot of BTC holders, small blockers, in the hands of a lot of BCH holders, because it was one-to-one allocated to those people. And they're not really believers in this ecosystem. So the ones that do believe in building on it proportionally have a very, very small percentage of the float compared to the new blockchains that start with maybe 40% to the founders of that blockchain. So in some ways, like, it requires some level of creativity in terms of capital raising from other Bitcoin holders, so that you can re-centralize or repool the Bitcoins into the hands of the people who are building the valuable applications on top. And even without that, I just think it requires people to have a very abundant mindset. So my example to this is, if you took BSV price today and dropped it to $1, how would your behavior change? I think people would think $1 is very cheap. Now, why do they think it's cheap? Just purely off of empirical evidence. Like Aristotle said, like first principles thinking is like empirical evidence plus reason. So if you've seen that Bitcoin has gone to $100 or $400, then at $1, you want to buy a lot. You might want to even take a loan to buy more. And certainly if you were building an application knowing that Bitcoin is at $1, I think that you would not build a micropayments app for 3 or 4 years, because you would be fearful that by the time your application built on top of Bitcoin was generating any amount of real revenue via micropayments, that the price would have already risen on you back to $100 or $400. So you would likely seek to raise in Bitcoins first. Like you go to the community, if you're a RelayX, you say, hey, I would be happy to build you your first wallet, your first token wallet, your first AMM, your first NFT marketplace, but please give me $20,000 of BSV first. And that's a very small amount of money. You get 20,000 coins, and now you would think you have a decent amount of the portion of the coins, and then you go off and build. Now, what's funny is that if you truly believe Bitcoin is a infinitely scalable ledger and truly serving the whole world for 5 billion people, 8 billion people, due to its incentive design of proof of work mining and competition and Red Queen game and all these concepts, then actually, even at today's price at 100, there's nothing stopping it from going to $10,000, which is the same 100x, right? So we can't be trapped into the price history of this ledger, like, oh, it's always been a stable coin between 100 and 200. You have to understand this ledger's potential. And if that's the case, I would say that the best way to counteract the fact that sort of the coins have already been pulled away is you want to raise money in Bitcoins today and try to get as many upfront and then build. And it's okay if what you build doesn't actually recuperate the amount of Bitcoins that you kind of yielded from asking for a raise, because Bitcoin's incentive design is very, very different. I just want to expand on that. If you look at the evidence of all the tokens, or even most of the NFTs issued on Bitcoin, 99.9% of those have underperformed the price of Bitcoin SV. And we should expect that. That's part of removing finance from our society, is that if everyone is earning measuring the base asset, which is a deflationary currency, none of the assets, whether securities, stocks, commodities, NFTs, nothing should outperform Bitcoin. And in that case, it's the reversal of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is, let's stay private as long as possible, build up a huge user base, which I won't even get to because you can't even build that kind of moat of user base because the data is stored on chain, right? But you want to exit at the end of a 10-year building period, and that's where you get a windfall, whether it's Tesla or whether it's Uber or whatever else. But in Bitcoin, your windfall happens at the earliest stage because Bitcoin outperforms anything that you're building on top of Bitcoin. So the two primary examples are like the guy who sold the pizza got 10,000 BTCs. There was no better time to sell the pizza than that day. If you sold the pizza any day after that, you're getting less than 10,000 BTCs. Or Eric Voorhees selling one of the first use cases, Satoshi Dice, I think he got something like 150,000 BTCs for this first gaming app. So I would encourage that entrepreneurs want to monetize their application as early, even at the concept stage, as possible. And that also allows the market to give you information on, is this what the Bitcoin ecosystem, is this what Bitcoin holders want to part with their Bitcoins for? And if you aren't able to raise the Bitcoins, then that tells you that idea is not what Bitcoin needs. So I would want entrepreneurs, instead of having a defined idea of, I'm passionate about gaming, I'm passionate about finance, and I'm going to use the ledger just for this little piece of data storage or whatever, come to the market with something that you think Bitcoin holders as a society want, and try to raise as much as you can, and then try to deliver the product. And it's okay if you don't return the Bitcoins back, because you cannot outperform Bitcoin. There's a limited number of Bitcoins. But perhaps for the investor, their benefit is not from directly a return on their investment in your project, but more so they maybe allocated 1% of the Bitcoin holdings towards contributing to your project. And you've helped increase the velocity of Bitcoins or utility of Bitcoin, and you've increased the price of the other 99% of the Bitcoin that they still have. That's right. Kind of the healthy ecosystem.
So people who are investing in the future of BSV rather than investing in this particular enterprise. But One thing I want to just ask you in relation to the sort of liquidity in the market, this is absolutely critical, I think. And you mentioned that the fact that a lot of BSV holders are people in the other currencies and BTC and so on. How much importance do you attach to these graphs that we're always, the pie charts we're seeing on Twitter, which show that BSV transactions are outnumbering those on other chains? I mean, and everyone thinks, wow, this is a fantastic, this is a terrific sign. I mean, do you go along, is that something that makes you feel good about BSV, or do you think that's not as important as other people think?
Well, I think the fact that you can even see the other chains on that pie chart means that BSV is doing very, very terrible.
Right.
Like, it's like saying I have the same number of websites as there are TV channels, or I have 60% more than TV channels. It's like, if you're running the internet, you should have, I think today there's like hundreds of billions of websites and there's still maybe a few hundred TV channels. You should have that kind of a ratio. So the fact that there's more transactions today is not that big a deal. It needs to be magnitudes more. Secondly, those transactions are not peer-to-peer interactions. So there's a quality of transactions. So what is the notional amount of money being a Bitcoin being traded around? So this is where liquidity comes in. If you measure the amount of turnover in BTC terms or dollar value of turnover, I think it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars per day. Oh, sorry, tens of billions of dollars per day of BTC turnover each day. And the entire market cap of BSV is 1.5 billion. And certainly not all of it turns over every day. I think maybe $20, $30 million, $50 million trades on exchanges. And so you want to measure both the number of transactions, but the amount of notional of BSV in dollar terms or BSV terms that's turning hands. And if you look at the current transactions, I think the top three are all just a single company, writing to the ledger. And sure, like last year,
that's crypto fights.
Crypto fights, yeah. If you have 5 million transactions as crypto fights per day, but is being done by like a few hundred users, that is not growing the price. That is not growing the economy. It's like I use the internet to upload 100 hours of videos onto a site called YouTube, but there's only 2 people watching. Does that make YouTube a very valuable product? No.
So how to get this whole economy working in the way that you believe it should, which would be incredibly powerful? I mean, your background is in banking, and you worked for Barclays before you got into any of this stuff. And I think that you believe that Bitcoin SV really needs to embrace financial products in order to achieve what you want to see. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin's number one advantage is its ability to facilitate markets. Why do companies want to go public is access to capital. But why do the governments not allow any small business to go public? Because there needs to be a level of trust. So you need to be audited and have 3 years of accounting history. And so you have a case where small businesses are disincentivized to form. You see with COVID, a lot of small businesses have closed down. Bitcoin as a value transfer network is able to value what the internet did to information. So I don't care if you're a billionaire or a peasant, when you use WhatsApp, it's the same cost, the same speed to send a message. Same with Instagram. Now, Bitcoin allows you to do that so that a small business is able to raise a $5 of money the same way as a larger team can raise via an ICO or something, billions of dollars. That levels a playing field. And that's ultimately the value. Even the use cases that people talk about storing data on the blockchain or uploading pictures on a blockchain, ultimately is intended so that you can monetize that picture, right? So that you can own that picture, so you can generate money off of that picture. And so this whole thing revolves around money of one way or another. And so they're all really financial products. So you want to think about what size is the market that you're really targeting. And I would encourage entrepreneurs to take a first principles approach to looking at the ledger, looking at the attributes of the ledger, and looking at sort of their own resources. Like, how much time are you going to spend on your app? And if your app is very minuscule and very not, if Bitcoin is 10% of your app and 90% of traditional web company, like making a landing page, making whatever else, and you're just adding Bitcoin payments, then I think your chance of success is much lower because you're not using Bitcoin to its full capability. And so I think today is not the right time to think about traditional mainstream apps like YouTube with Bitcoin payments or Instagram with Bitcoin payments.
But didn't you just buy Streamanity?
I did it as a favor to the ecosystem to make sure those videos don't get lost. But not
you
the right
mean
time.
It was never a serious business proposition as far as you were concerned?
I think it was something that was going bankrupt, and under my leadership, it might still go bankrupt, but we'll see. But I'm waiting for the videos to be hosted on chain, so the fees by miners needs to get much cheaper.
Right. But when I was talking about Bitcoin getting more and BSV getting more involved in financial world, I was thinking more of, big Wall Street companies with, billions, and that's where the big money is. And as you say, BSV's market cap is tiny in relation to some of these others. And don't we need to get involved in that world of more traditional financial world and CBDCs and all that stuff? I mean, it's
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Why not?
Absolutely not. That's like saying that you want to go to the post office and tell them to build WhatsApp. No one who built WhatsApp has anything to do with the post office. No one who built Instagram had anything to do with the photography industry or Kodak or anything like that. Innovation comes from the edges. Innovation comes from building something that decentralizes power. So you have to ask yourself, how did Wall Street even get so big in the first place? Well, that's because there was no blockchain. If the blockchain came first, there'll be no Wall Street.
But you were talking about an entrepreneur raising $5 here and there. I mean, that's not going to revolutionize the world of finance, is it?
No, I'm saying that you want to have your product allow people to raise any amount of money. Take a look at a product like Uniswap. It allows you to do asset exchange on the Ethereum network. It works for a $5 asset the same way it works for a $1 trillion asset. I'm saying you can be indiscriminate. If you build WhatsApp, users can write an essay if they wanted to. They can write a book, but they can also just send an emoji. Same with YouTube. You can upload like a 5-hour documentary if you wanted to. You can upload a 5-second video if you wanted to. So I'm not saying that you build an application that only allows you to raise $5. I'm saying that the blockchain is so efficient that it opens up the possibilities to everyone. And financial products are going to, so you want to take what Wall Street does and enhance it and redo it on the blockchain. You don't want to invite Wall Street over as customers. There are reasons why they would never be customers of things on BSV. Just like at the beginning, movie studios had a huge, or television channels had a huge pushback on using things like YouTube or using things like Twitter. So think about how Twitter and YouTube first started. They did not start with New York Times editors on Twitter. They were eventually able to get the presence of the world, get the CEOs of Elon Musk over to Twitter because they started as just a micro blogging service for the masses. And so eventually all the mega corporations will come to BSV, but that's not your jumping off point.
You've suggested the best kind of idea for a hackathon, which is really to encourage entrepreneurs, is a question like, how do we get Bitcoin into the hands of 10 million people? And that I think your whole thinking about this is to address the problem of distributing BSV amongst billions of people. And I mean, it's an easy question to ask, but do you believe that there are potential sort of plausible answers to it?
Oh, there are. And it's the only ledger that can facilitate this. So the other chains have gotten maybe tens of millions of users from a sort of building an off-chain ecosystem of exchanges and fiat on-ramps, and then building up a narrative that these assets are somewhat, limited in supply and valuable. And it has a distribution network that's not inherent to the chain of those chains themselves. But Bitcoin SV as a chain, number one, can fit everyone onto the same chain. That's a great part. And number two, as more people join, the chain actually gets cheaper. It does not get more expensive and slow down like Ethereum or Solana. It gets cheaper. So on a technical level, that's two great building blocks. And the third thing that Bitcoin has going for it is that because it's built on a UTXO model and not an account model, you can actually do transactions where one single input, so one user signing a transaction, can send Bitcoins to tens of millions of people. That's been demonstrated by certain apps on Bitcoin in terms of stress testing or kind of these one-off events, but there hasn't been a utility or use case that makes people want to send around Bitcoins. But it is the only ledger that's possible. And if you know it's possible, then it's just a matter of time until someone comes up with the right idea. And so Bitcoin can grow within itself internally. It does not need to grow from external kind of ecosystems.
But I mean, it seems to me that if somehow or other 1 billion people had a BSV wallet on their smartphone, then that would be great because, as you say, a person with not very much money could very quickly distribute some money to that whole population. And then perhaps they would start realizing that it was worth something or an easy way to pay people for something. But it's that making it something that people can receive that is really the sticking point, isn't it?
Yeah. And you want to remove all barriers. So I just think if you think Bitcoin can scale, and it's proven to be able to scale, then your mindset must be that Bitcoin can grow faster than the other blockchains. So rather than calling crypto a scam and saying that price doesn't matter, you should be thinking that number one, Bitcoin as a number of users can grow faster than any other chain. And number two, Bitcoin's price can appreciate greater and faster than any other chain. If you don't believe those two things, then please stop telling people Bitcoin can scale, because those two thoughts are very opposed to each other. You can't both be saying this is the greatest ledger ever, it can scale, we've solved scalability. Meanwhile, you're telling people that price doesn't matter, because it just means that you're lacking imagination or true belief of what the ledger can do.
But this whole, going back to what I was saying about smartphones and wallets, it reminds me of Microsoft wanting to put Internet Explorer on every copy of Windows.
Yeah.
And that made Explorer, much better than Netscape in terms of its distribution. And it didn't really have to be better. It just needed to be there and people got familiar with it. Isn't that the kind of problem we've got here? And that maybe we just need somebody to persuade a phone or the phone manufacturers to put wallets on phones. I mean, if you can't do that, how is it going to happen?
No, but it takes 1 second to download a wallet.
Yeah, okay? But how do you get people to want to do it if they haven't got any money in it?
No, hold on. You don't need money in your Bitcoin wallet. That's the beautiful thing. In every other blockchain, you need to fund your wallet with a little bit of the native asset for your account to even be open on the chain. It's like opening a bank account and you have to park a little bit of deposit, a little bit of money to get your account open. Bitcoin is the only blockchain that scales that does not require that. So number one, you can start with 0 assets and then do some activity, a service, and earn your first Bitcoins. Okay, that's number one. Number two, what you're saying is, oh, wouldn't it be nice if the iPhones that we bought already came pre-installed with a Bitcoin wallet? Okay, but my hypothesis is that the only reason you don't go download a Bitcoin wallet yourself today, there's no barriers to doing that, is because there's no use case. Doing something that you can already do, but cheaper is not the power of Bitcoin SV. Because for someone to switch over to doing this activity, it has to be something they've never been done before. So look at why NFTs took off the last 2 years. NFTs is not like something you did before, and then now you do it on the blockchain. It's an entirely new thing. And I think brand new innovations are going to be what drives Bitcoin forward.
Okay, so what kind of thing would persuade them, as you say, to get a wallet and then to do something that earned them some BSV or allowed somebody to send them some?
Well, it has to be they can make more money doing this activity in a faster period of time than anything else possible in the entire planet. Like no one was convinced on Ethereum. What is Ethereum? But I just heard that I could issue a token and raise $5 million overnight. Okay, that is what made me want to get Ethereum wallet and launch an ICO. No one is passionate about some kind of like NFT on the blockchain. So when you tell these people that, hey, on BSV, the NFTs are actually stored on chain and whatever, it's not just a hash, no one cares. The reason why they care about the Ethereum NFTs is because there's a whole ecosystem, there's a lot of money to be made from selling these NFTs on Ethereum. So if you as an artist can make more money selling on Ethereum, you're going to choose Ethereum, regardless of what the transaction fees are. So Bitcoin needs to think very much in terms of aggressive, hungry, not just for yourself, but also for your users. And think about, does my application allow this user to make more money than they could otherwise? And you have to ask yourself, why do people use Twitter? Why do people use Instagram? They're actually not looking to make money. They're looking for attention. So they want 10,000 people to follow their tweet. They don't care if, hey, I made no money from that. Here's another app called Twitch. 5 people will give you a like. They don't want the 5 people giving you a like and paying you 5 cents. They don't want to make that. They want the attention. So it's really important to examine what makes the current internet apps popular, and does Bitcoin actually solve that for what the user is looking for? And if Bitcoin is about money, then you have to find some use case for some kind of activity that gives that user a better way to make money faster. And if you don't qualify for that, don't build it.
You've had big thoughts that you and I have talked about over 2 or 3 years now, actually. And you've also been busy with actually building things. But you're also very critical of other entrepreneurs and other apps. What is your feeling about the level of sort of quotes community in this? I know Craig Wright is very sort of against the idea of community, and he likes the idea that everybody's sort of at each other's throats because that's what proper competition is. But what are your thoughts on that kind of thing?
Actually, I've had a major change of heart in the sense that I love Sempi. I love Handcash. I love the companies in this space. I'm very abundant in my thinking these days. And that Bitcoin as a ledger, just like internet, it has 1 trillion websites. Not every one of them needs to be good. So we want to welcome every idea onto the Bitcoin blockchain. I don't care if it's spammy.
So what's made you, instead of slagging off the competition, want to be nice to people?
Well, I just think that we're pretty, number one, it was very hypocritical and very incongruent for my views for the future of Bitcoin to be so positive in the world that it can usher in. But meanwhile, I think I was still back to my previous very competitive, whether it's athletic competitiveness or career competitiveness, in that, you know, I used to work at a company called OKCoin, and there would be another company called Huobi, and they would battle it out all the time. Or Barclays would battle out against Bank of America or Goldman Sachs. And
that's capitalism as it's supposed to be, isn't it?
That's capitalism. But as I sort of understood better internally what Bitcoin really does, I think I could summarize it as the Medici family inventing double entry accounting allowed the rise of corporations. But with double entry accounting, you're going to have 100,000 or millions of different corporations, each with their own share structure, each with employees who are motivated for their specific corporation to do well. Bitcoin is a triple entry accounting system. What that means at scale, whether it's in my lifetime or not, it means that you have a chance to create a single corporation for the entire planet. And so you're aligning interests between the entire human being species and the animals and natures around us. And I think if you look back a few hundred years from now, we're at the beginning stages of that. And so I don't view Sempi as a competitor. I don't view Handcash as a competitor. We are all in a single, non-invasive, non-controlled corporation. That's the Bitcoin SV ledger. So I have to live by my words, and that's why my attitude is very different these days.
So that's sort of like almost a mystical view of how Bitcoin is going to unite humanity and really solve all the problems of the world then, really.
Yeah, so you have 2 ways of solving problems right now. I mean, one way is what I just described. The other way right now is, I'm Bill Gates, I'm super smart, I built a corporation called Microsoft, I made a whole bunch of money. And now I have $100 billion to donate. And then my donation is going to change the world via charities. But that is just leveraging one person's kindness, one person's ability to then via charity try to solve the world's problems like global warming, diseases in Africa, this kind of stuff. But the Bitcoin shared ledger empowers every single person who's on that ledger to co-create, to cooperate. And I think that the world does not lack money. And in fact, if it was about money, Bill Gates' money is very, very, very meaningless in the grand scheme of things. Like, what does $100 billion really buy? You know, like you can maybe buy a few football clubs or something. Like, it doesn't really do very much, right? But if you allow the creative brains of people's minds to have a way to collaborate and surface and piece together, you will have scientists and artists solve almost every single problem that you can name today. And that's what Bitcoin does. And as an example today, this is why I want people to have this abundant mindset. You did not miss out by not buying Bitcoin SV at $1 and missed out 100x gain. If you truly are abundant, then you understand that Bitcoin could easily go to $100 billion market cap, $1 trillion market cap, $10 trillion market cap, whatever number you think of. It's unbounded. If it's unbounded scale, then the valuation is unbounded as well. And so if you look at today, each Bitcoin SV is trading at $90, something like that, $80. You buy one. I think even a McDonald's worker, right, today, after doing a full day shift at the new minimum wage in some parts of the United States of $15 an hour, they have enough money tonight to buy one BSV. But once you own one BSV, you own 1/21 millionth of the pie. A pie that is, again, infinitely in scale. It's not like you own, 1/21 millionth of a local bakery that is just never going to expand more than just a couple locations. So think about your holdings. I don't care how rich you are. Most likely you don't own 1/21 millionth of the world's land. You most likely do not own 1/21 millionth of Apple shares or the stock market or the bottles of wine on the planet. So you should feel extremely abundant with 0.1 BSV or 1 BSV or 2 BSVs. And then your mindset should change. To make that piece of the pie worth as much as possible, you want to contribute all of your ideas openly. You want to give as much as you can to the world in terms of your contribution. And I think that's one of the adjustments that I will make going forward in my own entrepreneurial endeavors. I've sort of really laid out previously sort of bigger vision, but kept the trade secrets to myself and our team. And we would then deploy them and be first to launch this product, first to launch that product. I think going forward, I will, whether in the form of these kind of interviews or blogs or whatnot, try and disseminate my ideas really openly, because quite frankly, it will be hypocritical for me to say you should be abundant with one BSV. And I have obviously more than one, and I'm kind of, keeping things close to the vest. So I like to live by the example I set.
Well, you are describing a system in which everybody who's got any interest in BSV is incentivized to absolutely support everybody else in that world. And if it's going to work on a global scale, it'll be interesting to see it had better work locally within BSV first, because that would be the sort of proof of concept, I suppose.
Yes, because it's a bit incongruent. If you want to build still a traditional company that you still want to go IPO, you still want to have like a moat, then you should probably launch your own blockchain where you actually own the blockchain itself. You shouldn't be building on the Bitcoin SV blockchain, because the Bitcoin SV blockchain, if Craig Wright says removes power, then also remove power from your application as well. So it's a bit incongruent to have this kind of diabolical views between how you behave in your own startup, in your own app, versus how you think the ledger will be. And again, I feel like the only way Bitcoin SV wins, especially because the world as it is today works very differently to the world that I think it can work like in the future. So as you've seen over the last few years, you have exchanges delisting Bitcoin, you have many other blockchains being formed. you have basically a world that really would like to use this technology and stick it on top of the way the world works today and amplify the way the world works now. There's not a lot of entrenched interest that wants to flip the entire world order on its head. So if you want to see that happen, then you have to overwhelm the complexity of the current multi-blockchain bridges and intermediary system that is crypto. And the only way to overwhelm it is to be so abundant in the way we are connected like a small world network as an ecosystem. And that is the only chance. Otherwise, every year we think, I've been wrong, as you can say, in the last 3 years, I've talked to you, been very optimistic about how quickly this thing can grow, but I've clearly been wrong on the timing. But I think mostly I've been wrong on the degree of how we go about things. And I've personally had a chance to reflect on my sort of misgivings. And part of that is some of the overly competitive notions I've had about this ecosystem. I went through a health crisis with COVID and a bunch of other personal issues. And it was really, after 9 years of being in this industry, a good time for me to step away. And I was blown away by sort of how much my teammates stepped up and how innovative they were. When I returned, I wanted to be a better person and be more aligned in my own behavior, my own commentary, my own work, and aligned with my vision for Bitcoin. And the unique thing about Bitcoin is that it doesn't require any single company to take this to 100 million users. I think that the escape velocity for Bitcoin reaches when one or two of us get to 1 million users, but those million users are living on chain. They're free to now migrate to other products. And then the ecosystem will naturally take the whole Bitcoin ecosystem to 100 million to 1 billion users. So we're at this phase where I've done my 3 years, and now I'm transitioning to kind of still working, but supporting other people to take this further. And with a bit more cooperation, then I think we will then have this ledger be much more powerful than it is today.
Well, that's amazing, Jack. I mean, I hate to reduce this to just saying that you're mellowing, because I appreciate that there's a a level of deep thinking here. And we haven't even talked about how you also believe that entrenched vested interests will be undermined in this new system, because you constantly have to earn your dominance within the system, and over time it erodes, whereas in the current system it actually strengthens. I think, would that be a way of putting it?
Yeah, when I first read the white paper, what drew me to it was that it was a system that had no decay. So if you think about the great empires, Roman Empire, or even like any government or any corporation, there's always a start and an end. Sure, Amazon might be hot, but eventually it'll be replaced, just like Kodak went to zero. Because your system, because it accrues value to shareholders or to stakeholders, then the new innovations from your employees or from your lower level citizens, they're always incentivized to want to form a new country or a new corporation where they provide their value. And so Bitcoin as a blockchain, if you look at the stakeholders there, no one cares if you're Satoshi Nakamoto with 1 million Bitcoins. Not a single Bitcoin was given to you for free. You had to mine those 1 million Bitcoins, so you had to earn it that way. Secondly, there's no more Bitcoins coming to you unless you provide a service or a good or mine for Bitcoins. And if you were a big miner in 2012, great. You got a lot of Bitcoins in 2012, but your mining machines, if it doesn't keep up, will never get another Bitcoin. And not a single Bitcoin will go to you. So Bitcoin as a system in 100 years is actually as new as it was the very first block, because those properties are still true in that the transaction fees of the network in 100 years time will only go to the best miner in 100 years time. It is not going to anyone who holds Bitcoin or anyone who has hashing power today. That is a beautiful system, and there's no power. It works very opposite to every single thing that we understand today. And I think the way Bitcoin is designed works very much in line with nature, and the fact that your son or daughter can live on, but we as humans, we die. And that speaks to the way, so I think as a societal system, it's the first system that's designed that works the way that we are supposed to work as people. And that's what's beautiful about it. There's no control or power. And I think that if I were to talk about the polar opposite of this is what they've tried to do with BTC by limiting the base layer transaction capacity and building this Lightning network on top. It has very nefarious implications because the Lightning network as an infrastructure looks very similar to the SWIFT network with a bunch of corresponding banks and hub and spoke like airports, like most flights go through New York or London or whatnot. And that has reintroduced the idea of exchanges or stakeholders that run the Lightning network that will accrue more and more Bitcoins just by a factor of the rich get richer. And in that system, it's even more dangerous as a social level because instead of running the SWIFT network with US dollars, you're now running it with a rare asset called BTC. What that means is before, when you escape the banking system to go buy land or buy horses or buy paintings or buy wine, you are appreciating your asset by escaping the system. BTC as your calculating currency, just like you use centimeters or miles as your measurement system, but yet you don't let people use the base layer network as BTC has done, then what you will do is you will enslave people financially to this system that is controlled by the same kind of oligarchs, because any person who opts out of that and chooses to invest in art or real estate or other kind of off-chain assets in the pursuit of freedom may likely underperform financially the people who choose to stay within the matrix and use the BTC network, because that is a limited supply currency. So like all technologies that can be used for good or bad, I view that a society built on top of BTC may initially have the illusion of this is great, this is sound money, but you're actually accumulating more and more power to the people who run that network, which will no longer be an open competition between miners, but more a fixed number of players that run the Lightning Network on top.
Well, I started this interview by saying that you were committing a heresy by talking about BSV price, but I think you've ended completely on message as far as the sort of BSV establishment is concerned in relation to the Lightning Network and BTC. And I also think that there is a tremendously interesting book to be written about the politics of all this, because what you're talking about really is political systems and incentives for people. And I hope that one day, maybe you'll consider that, because it's really fascinating stuff. So thank you so much, Jack. And it's been a really, really interesting conversation, and good luck with turning all those ideas into action, which I know that you will.
The people will. I'll just leave it at that. So thanks a lot, Charles, for having me on.
You'll be standing cheering in the background instead of criticizing in the future.
For sure. Thanks a lot, Charles.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks so much to Jack Liu in the Bahamas. Next week, we travel just 1,100 miles southeast from there to Antigua, to the home of Calvin Ayre, the serial entrepreneur and owner of CoinGeek. I was lucky enough to do this one in person. We talk about the upcoming BSV Global Blockchain Convention, the impact of Craig Wright's court cases on BSV, and Calvin's excitement about the prospects for integrating IPv6 with the Bitcoin blockchain. So please join us both in sunny Antigua, actually it was raining that day, for all that and more. Till then, thanks for listening and goodbye.
This May, in Dubai, the BSV Global Blockchain Convention will bring together communities and unveil new breakthrough technologies. You'll be ushered into a world of collaboration and innovation, where you can network with hundreds of expert practitioners, pioneer thinkers, leaders, professionals, and entrepreneurs. Learn from forward-thinking brands and startups. Discover functional applications that enhance end-user experiences and create value and utility. The BSV Global Blockchain Convention is your gateway to engaging with scalable on-chain solutions and building long-lasting business partnerships. Turn ideas into reality. Propel your business forward. Join us at the BSV Global Blockchain Convention, May 24 to 26 in Dubai.
Life is short. Get out and get active. Immerse yourself in sound. Play hard and taste delight. Share your moments. Live a life of style. Activate your lifestyle. Shop your favorite brands with Bitcoin SV. Activate your lifestyle with CentB today.
Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin wallet, blockchain, stablecoins, MetaNet, the evolution of money. Everybody is talking about Bitcoin today, but what exactly is it? Learn the basics from experts. Learn what Bitcoin is, how it works, and why it matters. Bitcoin 101, your ultimate guide to the fundamentals of blockchain.